Hello, welcome to Final Whistle Weekly, your weekly dose of what's good for you. I'm Mark Griffiths, and that's your problem. And I'm joined by Neil Williams and Bill Long. Gentlemen, I hope you had a good New Year.
Yeah, very good New Year. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, quiet and until yesterday's football game. So yeah, good New Year to be honest. For you, Bill.
Yeah, great. Cheers, Neil. It was my little lad's first birthday on New Year's Eve, so that was quite nice spending time with the family on New Year's Eve and nice quiet one. So and then I ended up watching the game on TV, which is a bit of a novelty. So with him, and luckily I didn't go all the way to Barnsley. But I suppose we'll talk about that in a
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, had a
bit.
nice quiet journey across very wet motorways, some of which were shut on New Year's Day. What a treat. What did Kobe think of Wrexham, by the way?
He wasn't particularly impressed with the defensive performance in the first half, but was encouraged by the fight back in the second. So, no, he didn't cheer, but when they scored the first goal, obviously he's being conditioned to support the Reds, and so heard all the crowd cheering and went like that.
Oh,
So, um, that's not a good thing if you're 25, but he's won, so probably he's getting there eventually, I guess.
I'm sorry, Bill, but I expect high standards. Can you divorce your own child?
um, I'll look into it.
I've got to make a confession. When I was about his age, apparently, um, I was in my grand's house, and the FA Cup final replay was on Chelsea against Leeds, and my cousin um, egged me on to run around the front room chanting Chelsea, Chelsea. So, I also, I'm afraid, I sinned when I was a toddler, and I feel I've been absolved now by the gods of football. So there's hope for him yet. Well, let's crack on, shall we? Have a little break, and after that, we'll talk about, well, yeah, how the new year started on the pitch. Well, I put it to you, gentlemen, that it felt a bit like an old school Wrexham away day at Barnsley because we came out moral victors after giving them a good shellacking in the second half. But the fact of the matter is that we also came away with nothing. And that is very much, I think it's fair to say, Bill, how away games used to feel for Wrexham fans more than now.
Yeah, it's been a while since I felt relatively encouraged by a loss. Generally, because we go into games half expecting to win, and the only time that I didn't expect us to win was against this season. Really, was against Birmingham, and then even that loss kind of felt a bit devastating because of the performance. But you go to these Barnsley have been knocking on the door of promotion
Hmm.
on and off for the last 10 years, haven't they? And have even been in the championship within that time. So to go to a team like that and a ground like that and come away thinking we could have got more is actually not the end of the world, Neil, really, is it?
No, no, not the end of the world. And as before, I spoke to Mark briefly earlier, and we had a couple of games over Christmas ourselves, which, in all matter of fact, we didn't deserve to win both those games, but we came away with 3 points in
Mm.
both of them. So it's maybe tit for tat kind of thing. But yeah, second half was very encouraging to see how well they played. Um, and we should have put the ball in the net more than once. We had enough opportunities to do so. But that's football.
I tell you what really upset me was when Barnett crossed the ball in the second half, and their fullback Cotter stuck his arms up in the air, and the ball hit his chest. And we asked for the penalty, and the ref didn't give it. I mean, didn't he understand that that's a penalty? That's handball when we're attacking. Doesn't he get that? So Blackpool
No,
could clear it up for him.
clearly the brown paper bag wasn't heavy enough for him, Mark, was it?
Bill. I'll have you know, it's only when the EFL's regulations next year limit investment into the club to be used for football purposes that we'll have to spare cash to make bribes. At the moment, it's just focus on infrastructure. I mean, galling. It was like watching the women's team play because they've had so many games this season where you think, goodness sake, how is this ball not going in? I mean, Killip did. I mean, he's a good goalkeeper and he made some very good saves. We hit the bar, cleared off the line. We missed some chances. We had 3 penalty shouts, which, if I'm honest, I don't think any of them were penalties. But then, as we've seen, all joking apart, sometimes we get penalties that aren't penalties, and it was just a couple of heavy touches in front of goal, a couple of missed chances. I mean, it was insane. I'll give you my fab stat for you both to chew over. We had 60% possession in that game, which is the equal most we've had this season. Alongside, ironically, the Stevenage game, which had the same pattern, where we just battered them in the second half and couldn't get the ball in the net. In the second half alone, we had 68% percentage. And as we are a team who were knocking it forwards and risking possession, that's a big, big number for that sort of game. But we just did everything but score in the second half. It was encouraging but galling. I put it to you, Neil.
Yeah, really encouraging. But our strikers have been a bit off the boil, should we say, for a while, and we've had the likes of Max coming forward and Barney coming and scoring goals. And what the problem is, I do not know. I mean, Mullin scored that worldly goal, which I thought he might have, given his confidence a load of good, and he may have run on from there. But I can't put my finger on it, Mark. What the problem is with our strikers at the moment. It was interesting to see that Palmer came off at half time yesterday, and bringing Fletcher on so soon. So a great away day for the fans, but not nice to come away with nothing from the ground when we battered them so much in the second half. Look forward to Saturday and see what we do to Peterborough.
Well, Bill, I mean, I think Neil's raised an interesting point with the strikers. I mean, Mullin, I remember a few years ago putting my name into a Wu-Tang Clan name generator, and I came out as Righteous Avenger. And after Mullin had his journey into the advertising hoardings, he seemed like a righteous Avenger. He was everywhere, livid, just trying to fix it, and did everything but score. But yeah, he just couldn't. I didn't feel worried about him in that game. It was more just, it just won't quite drop right for him. He was so enthusiastic, wasn't he, and determined to make them pay for what they'd done.
Yeah, well, it was kind of hard to tell on TV, but it seemed to be quite wet in the second half. Were the conditions bad?
Yeah, it was quite. I mean, wet. Yeah, winds didn't really affect it. Oakwell's quite a high standard, so I don't think much wind came in. It was wet. They did actually have an unpublicised pitch inspection at 10:30 because they were a little worried, but I think they were just being overcautious. Certainly, I know that when Steve Parkin got there straight away because they like to have both sides represented if possible at a pitch inspection, he immediately was saying that there's nothing wrong with this pitch, and I thought it played fine. A bit wet. Don't think that excuses a couple of our mistakes with the footing, though. If I'm honest with you.
No, absolutely not. I'm thinking more. There was that chance in the second half of the game when Mullin, not long after being pushed into the advertising hoardings, where he got very close to Killip, and if he'd have just dinked it either side of him, probably would have put it in. But he just sort of put it quite high, and it was kind of a good position for him. Or am I sort of misremembering? It's kind of hard watching a game of football.
Go on.
Kind of hard watching a game of football when you've got a 1-year-old with a load of new toys just trying to bash everything across the room.
You sat next to me in other football matches. You should be used to it.
That's true. And that was hard as well, but yeah.
Oh, you made it sound like he was making notes for you in the intro to the show. Is that the one where it comes out and then Fletcher has the shot cleared off the line?
Yes, yeah.
Because, I thought Killip was...
So it hit him on the chest, didn't it? Sorry,
yeah.
It was, yeah.
He was terrifically quick off his line, wasn't he? And I think you're right. I think that it's a possibility, but I guess when the keeper gets in your face that quickly, it's a bit tricky, isn't it? I don't know. And
you've got to say as well, he thoroughly impressed me in the home game as well as there was at least one or two match saving. I mean, I know we ended up winning the Barnsley game, but there was one or two potentially match saving shots in that match, and he's done the same again for this one, hasn't he? They've come away with a win because of him, I think, Neil, really.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Going back to you with the conditions, with it being wet. I mean, O'Connell, when they scored their second goal, he slipped twice, and I'm thinking, was it wet? Was his studs not right or whatever? Because he slipped near the centre circle and got back into defence, and he slipped over again. So, which led to their second goal. But I was happy with their performance in the second half. But just for whatever reason, we cannot put enough goals away, and we create enough chances. And I'm sure it's worrying Parky at this moment in time. They're creating all these chances, but we're just not putting in the back of the net.
Well, I mean, I suppose creating chances and not scoring them is much better than not creating chances. But having said that, it's starting to be a little bit of a pattern that we make lots of chances and don't take many of them. And whether that means he looks in the transfer market or whether it is just, I do think, Mullin has done well considering what he's come back from, and that will click more as time goes on. But yeah, it's a bit of a concern. I was just going back to O'Connell as well. I had looked back at it today. I'm not so sure he did slip, funnily enough. I think I think it's that he had a poor touch that lost him the ball in the first place. And I think the reason he goes to ground is he tries to chop Waters and take a yellow card, take one for the team, and misses him. And then when he charges across, of course, he tries to get the block in, commits himself too early, probably because in his head he's thinking, oh my God, this is my fault, I've got to do something about it. And I think he commits too much, I think, and that's why he goes to ground, because he's trying to get a block in on the shot, which hasn't actually come. The guy switches feet, and O'Connell just slides him past him like Sol Campbell, heading for the exit at Wembley. But yeah, it was a shame because the goal was avoidable. I mean, both finishes are absolutely fantastic, aren't they? It was right behind Keeler Dunn's, and you can see him just put it just outside the post and curled it back in. It was a brilliant goal, but yeah, just galling that. I know people will say, why can't we play like the second half all the time? I think, well, you can't play like that because it's taking huge risks and it's frantic, and over 90 minutes you exhaust yourself. But on the other hand, we did go into sort of last 10-minute mode at half time, didn't we? Throwing Fletcher up front and really going hell for leather. It'd be good if we could take some elements of that, perhaps, Neil, and bring that into our play. But we can't go that wild in the first minute, surely.
No, I don't think you can, Mark. But thinking back to the earlier part of the season where we were actually scoring goals very freely, and right across the board. And for me now, whether it's because the opposition know a lot more about us and how we play, etc. now, and they're closing us down and tactically a lot better. But at the early part of the season, we scored so many goals and it was so entertaining, and they just seem to have dried up. And as I've said, they're creating the chances, they're just not putting them in the back of the net. And as you said, I think Mullin will, it will click for him again, and I think he'll score, a few goals. But you look at our leading goal scorers, and we haven't scored that many at all, have we?
6 goals, top scorer, isn't it? Lee and Cleworth now.
Yeah.
It's here's one for you, and it's a bit of a hot topic, and it's very hypothetical, and we're not speaking from a representing the club, we're representing ourselves here when we talk about this. Do you recall Sam Dalby in January?
Well, like I said, that was our next. Do you read my messages about these podcasts? That's our
I do. I'm also on about 3 hours sleep, Mark. Apologies.
Oh,
I'm wheeling out all the excuses today.
We'll dive onto that. I mean,
but sorry, we'll come. Yeah, you said we'll come onto it, but just to sort of link that to Barnsley, I don't, as much as I highly rate Dalby, and I think we'll come onto it. I don't think he's this type of striker that turns that game around, is he? Really, he's a good player, but he's not a prolific. Well, I mean, he is for Dundee United at the moment, but he's not generally a prolific goal scorer in the way that we set up. And I think we were missing someone with a little bit of cutting edge. And I think Dalby is one of those that takes a couple of chances to warm up into a game, isn't he? Rather than necessarily being somebody who's going to be incredibly clinical, Neil.
Yeah, well, if you'd have watched the game between Dundee and Dundee United earlier,
As you
who
did,
comes
Neil.
up? Who comes up and scores the decisive goal in the 88th
Yeah.
minute? Crossing from the wing, but who makes his presence inside the box? But Sam Dalby gets in front of the defender, trots the ball home, makes it 2-1 to Dundee United. Top scorer, 10 goals this season.
In all of Scotland.
Yeah.
Scottish Premier Player of the month in November.
Yeah.
I
But, is he going to want to come back to Wrexham because he's in such a good vein of form up in Dundee? That would be my concern if he was recalled.
And he's been speaking very highly about his experience in Scotland and how he likes the teammates, and so that's a very good question. You don't want to bring a player back if they want to stay where they are, do you? Really, and make him unhappy.
And I believe maybe is he out of contract in the summer as well?
Yeah.
See, I'm thinking that a lot of people are coloured by last season when they viewed Dalby when he didn't manage to get many goals. I thought people got on his back a bit prematurely. And the season before, admittedly, 2 levels lower down, he was making impacts. He was, and off the bench, he was making impacts, immediate impacts, and he did score goals, and he took the Palmer's place on merit. So my inclination is to think that if we did bring him back, he would certainly add something for us. And the thing is, we've already got Palmer, Fletcher, Farl. I know they're different types of striker. Big guys blocking Farl's developments, because there is similarity, I think, between those two and how we might use them. But it'd be interesting. I'd be tempted. I've got to be honest. And I'd also suggest, okay, and this is me being speculative. January, we come into this. We've got a shot of getting up in the Championship, obviously. Does that encourage us to maybe, I don't want to say go for broke, I don't think that's our style, but certainly spend in January, maybe bringing forwards a couple of signings we planned for the summer in order to get the big push and try and get into the Championship? Does the change of the EFL financial regulations next season, which limits how much owner investment can go into the playing budget, make you feel like, well, let's put some in now then before we're held to those rules? Does that all mean you take a punt? I wondered that, but then I also think Parkinson is a manager who is orderly and sensible and plans things out, and we've got this far because we've had a plan and we've progressed through it. And Parkinson is not a manager who, like most managers, who would say, "Oh, I want more cash, I want to buy another shiny striker." He's a player who will say, "I want somebody who is the right fit." Well, he knows Dalby's the right fit in terms of the right personality, and he brought him in because he rates him, and he was always highly praising him last season. Does he think, well, we brought him in to develop and improve? He clearly has this season. So, we bring him back. I don't know. I really don't know. It's a fascinating one, isn't it?
I think we have to remember that before Mullin hit his purple patch of form at Cambridge, and then ended up with us, he was he was a similar sort of age, wasn't he? Was he about 26, 27 when he started to play really well for Cambridge, and Sam Dalby's only 25. I think the fact that generally the ages of players over the last sort of 20 years have gotten peaks of being hit a lot younger. Remember when I was a kid, my dad always used to say, "Oh yeah, your players didn't hit their peak until they're 27, 28, 29, and now sort of players are expected to be at their prime at 22, 23. We could, whether it's at Wrexham or not, we could be just about beginning to see the best of Sam Dalby, couldn't we? And I think it'd be daft not to consider it, at least, wouldn't it? There was a passage of play, oh God, I want to say it was against Wycombe, but I can't remember for definite, where Elliot Lee and Dalby linked up, and it was one of the best sort of passing movements I've seen in the whole of Parkinson's reign. It didn't end up in a goal directly from either of them two, but I think Fletcher scored off the deflection, didn't he?
Yeah, Dalby made the most beautiful little pass, rolling his man and rolling it into Lee's path at exactly the right way to Lee's shot, keeper saved it, and Fletcher scored the rebound, didn't he?
Yeah.
And as you were saying that, I was also thinking back, and I know, you can win arguments by going back to individual little moments. It's how consistently players do it that really matters. But I was thinking back to the FA Cup tie last season at Mansfield when he and Mullin was sensational. Dalby scored a cracking goal from the edge of the area, but Dalby bullied the defence that had that big Aidan Flint in it. He was absolutely unplayable that day. He's got that in him. At the start of last season, even though people perceive him to have been unsuccessful, but he actually had the best assist per minute ratio of any player in the division for not just start the season, quite a long time. But yeah, I don't know. I just think, Neil, as well, what Bill said about his contract running out is very relevant, because let's be honest, if we don't secure him now, he's going to go on a free. Do we protect our investment anyway? Because he's clearly got some value now. He's top scorer in an established top division in Europe. He's got value.
Oh, he definitely got value. But how do you entice him to sign his extended contract when he's clearly enjoying life up in Scotland and playing the best football of his career so far?
The only way you can entice him, Neil, is without wanting to sound harsh, is forcing him back, making him the main man and hoping it works, because he's not going to want to sign for us when he's going to have the likes of Rangers and Celtic knocking on the door. They're going to be looking at him and thinking, you're the top scorer in Scotland. Come and join us, mate.
Yeah. I
So
suppose.
How do you get him to sign that contract extension? It's very, very difficult. And we've already got a plethora of strikers there who are not being used at the moment, like Bodvarsson and you mentioned Farl. We've got 6 or 7 strikers, then you have to lose somebody else out your squad, then do you, if you bring him back? And
Farl's too young, so he doesn't count towards registration. Bodvarsson's contract is up this month.
Right.
I would assume that we'd be looking to free up his space in the squad, either for Dalby or for somebody that we buy. I suppose one point you could make to Dalby in trying to get him to sign a contract is, what are Fletcher's plans? He's 38 now. Maybe Fletcher wants to sign off with a flourish this season. So that could open up a slot for Dalby, even if he stays on loan in Dundee. I don't know. It's intriguing. And then, of course, there's other players we've got on the books out on loan. Jake Bickerstaff hasn't been getting games for Accrington, has he, unfortunately? But they'd look to be selling their main striker, but you'd assume...
Well, he's definitely not getting games for Accrington because he plays for Altrincham now, Mark.
You know what? I was going to say Altrincham, and I said, stop it, Mark. Say Accrington.
He was Accrington last year, wasn't he?
Yeah. Darn. But yeah, they're apparently their main striker could be on the move. Oh, I noticed that West Brom recalled one of Wickham's loan players. Just there's a Louis Barry on them, so that's all encouraging me as well. I don't know. It's tough for Bickerstaff, I think, who's developed well, but maybe we've got promoted a bit too quickly for him in many regards. He's never let us down. McNicholas is long-term injury, so I can't see him moving back across. And Billy Waters.
Davis at Grimsby still.
Yes, well, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Yeah, Davis has been doing very well. I feel like it would do Davis a lot of good to have a full season doing really well for Grimsby. Billy Waters, I can't see that he'll come back, to be honest. He's very happy where he is. But well, it'd be fascinating to see how January plays out, won't it?
Don't forget we got Marriott coming back soon as well, so that throws a cat amongst the pigeons, doesn't it?
Exactly. And Bamford's coming in, isn't he? And players, Bamford of his 40,000 a week wage. Oh yeah, we'll bring him in. Rooney's available again now, isn't he? Wayne Rooney. He can do a job. You look, we'll be linked to Wayne Rooney and Johan Cruyff tomorrow on the Wrexham Insider. And on that bombshell, scroll to the end of this section to see what the actual headline's about. Why don't you? Let's move along, and next we'll have a quick chat about a massive couple of weeks coming up for Wrexham's women's team. Well, coming up next, we'll be looking at the key event of 2024. It's only when us three sit in judgment on them that you get the true perspective, isn't it, everyone? But first, like the women's team. Oh my word! Britain Ferry did the dirty on us by winning two of their games in hand during the Christmas break. How dare they? Which is bad for us because we've just by beating Barry got within reaching distance of the top four, and our Britain Ferry have jumped up, and we're now 5 points off the top four. Did I say bottom four a minute ago? So that's really frustrating. It's good for Welsh women's football because Britain Ferry beat Cardiff and Swansea, which is hardly expected. But fair play to them. Suddenly we've got a three-team title race, and we are chasing Swansea for fourth. But yeah, it's deeply frustrating for the team. You can still make up 5 points, can't you, Neil? But 5 points making up in 4 games, you really have to finish strongly, don't we?
Oh, very much so, Mark. I mean, you follow the women's game week in, week out, don't you? And you're up to speed with everything that's going on there. And I'm not sure how many games have got left now before the cut-off point, before the division divides.
Yeah.
But we say 5 points is a lot. Yes, it is, but I'm sure the women's team are quite capable of winning a couple of games, and you could be right back in the mix again. But as I said, Mark, I'm not sure how many games there are before the cut-off is.
Yeah, 4 there are. And if you want me to paint a nice optimistic picture, and I want to, because I think they deserve to be in the top 4. They've really rallied well. And like I said, I think the results haven't quite matched up to the performances. Our next 2 games, I hate using the phrase must win, but I don't think there's any alternative here. We are playing the bottom 2 in our next 2 matches, who have 1 point each from playing each other. Cardiff Met away first, then Aberystwyth at home. If we win those 2, we can put a lot of pressure on Swansea because their next 2 games are against Britain Ferry, again, who've just beaten them, and Cardiff. Okay. So, it is feasible that we could be above Swansea in 2 games' time if we do our part of the job and things don't turn out for Swansea.
But then it depends on who our next 2 games are.
Yeah, well, yes, because then we play TNS at home, who are league leaders now. So that'll be tough. But, it's not impossible.
No, they just narrowly beat us by the odd goal, didn't they, a couple of weeks ago? So
yeah. They
competitive game.
We were under par in that game, but, at home we've been doing very well. And then final game of the season, we need to make sure there's something to play for because it's at Swansea. So it'd be great if we can get our noses ahead of them before then. Oh, really great if we just we're 4 points ahead of them, frankly. But it's going to be gripping. Plus, we also have a home semi-final in the League Cup against Swansea, and a home quarter-final in the FA Cup against Swansea. So this period coming up now, next 6 weeks or so, going to be absolutely gripping. And, if we can hit form, we could end up having a terrific season after all. It's exciting coming to the boil like this, I've got to say.
I was totally unaware, Mark, how I knew they got through to the cup games, but was unaware they were both home. So they've got some good home games coming up. They've got TNS at home, they've got Aberystwyth at home. And as you say, that Swansea game, the last game of the season, hopefully it's all settled by then, but it could be a big humdinger game and winner takes all. So you've got some travels coming up, Mr. Griffiths, which I'm sure you'll enjoy.
Yeah, and I was thrilled to see the usual yellow weather warning for this weekend, going down to Cardiff and back. Yay! There's always a yellow weather warning when Wrexham are in town. And I think I've said to you previously that although, there have been some hairy journeys for the men's game, the women's team, it's always pouring down when the women's team is playing. There's been, I think I'm right, there's been 1 game where it hasn't, 2 games at Barry. Of course, there's a guaranteed good weather there, aren't they? They were dry. Everyone else is soaking wet all the time. Blinking heck. So, yeah, it should be interesting. But I'm looking forward to it. I love me Sundays, and they've got a chance here to grab hold of something and
I
achieve
can
something
say that
special.
that yellow weather warning, Mark, they're saying 30 to 40 centimetres of snow, mate, this weekend. So
Yeah, thanks, Neil.
you might not get far.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, I
You'll
quite. Oh, sorry.
you'll see, and I'm sure you'll make a good go of it getting there. So
Just
It was an entertaining hour by hour thing in the leader about when exactly there will be snow, which entertains me firstly because the Met Office don't know hour by hour when the snow will be in 2 days' time anyway, do they? So it's made up. But it was great. It was all these sort of apocalyptic headlines, hour to hour, how the snow will hit Wrexham and all this, you know? And then it just basically went hour by hour saying light rain, light rain, light rain. It's going to snow at 9 o'clock on Saturday night, apparently, followed then by heavy rain, which, in my experience, usually means that by the next morning there's no snow. So yeah, but it's for all of pretty much all of Britain, isn't it? So how bad it will be down south is and in between is the main issue, isn't it? I don't know. I don't know. Well, we'll see. Not desperate to go down to Cardiff midweek either, if I'm honest with you, to replay it, but we'll see where it
yeah, but
goes.
exciting times ahead for the women's team, Mark. As I say, they've got some important games coming up, especially with the two home cup games against Swansea again. So I'll have to try and get over to one of those.
Yeah, should be good fun. We got some cracking games. Get down to the Rock, everybody. It's going to be good. Bill, you were jumping in to say something, and I kept interrupting you.
I've completely forgotten what I was going to say now, Mark. I'm not going to lie.
Fair enough.
What's the worst case scenario, and they are in the bottom half of the table. How do you think that affects planning for next season?
I think it'd be a real disappointment because of the way they've made year-on-year progress. Um, I don't know that it necessarily will have a real, it's not as if you're talking about big amounts of prize money or things like that. There's no danger of us going down because the bottom two are well adrift. So there's no looking over our shoulder. It'll just mean for the second phase of the season, last 6 games will be fairly meaningless. Us scrapping out to finish fifth. It's one of those things where they call it the plate, and I think you do get some sort of trophy nobody wants. But meh. So it'll be disappointing. But then even if that did happen, and let's hope not, but if it did happen and we do well in the cups, maybe win one, we could maybe still view it as progress. I don't think it affects us going forwards as such. I don't think you struggle to sell us as a club to prospective players because we've already got that issue we've talked about before of semi-pro players. The best players in our league don't particularly want to travel north, but they know what Wrexham are. They know what we can do and what sort of situation financially we're in. So all that's positive. I think it hurts us because it's nice to keep progressing.
I suppose there's an argument then that if we finish fifth or sixth or even seventh, let's say in an extreme circumstance, but win one of those two cups, is that more valuable than having a season where you finish fourth?
I I think it would rescue it definitely. I mean, we've never won a cup.
Yeah.
Last year cup final was the Welsh Cup final, first time we got to a cup final. So yeah, I mean that would be amazing, and I think that would be something that you could really, yeah, it would make it a success, 100%, 100%.
Mm.
It's just a shame, staying in that top four, continuing to close that gap with Cardiff and Swansea, which we have done, to be fair, this season. Would be a great achievement, and it would be progress, and it'd be a shame. I don't I don't think I want to put it as any stronger than that in a sense. It
Yeah.
just means we didn't manage it this year. The thing is, the Britain Ferry have shown very clearly there should be more teams in the top division because they've hit the division like a truck, and so they look like they're grabbing on the top four places unless they fall off badly. Barry Town, I know we've just beat them twice and dominated them in those games, well, to a great extent, but they've improved massively as well. So last year, there was a gulf between us and Swansea and Cardiff, but there was also a gulf below us to the fourth place team Aberystwyth. But Britain Ferry and Barry are both playing at a higher level than Aberystwyth were, and that's what's made it competitive for us. Oh, and TNS didn't get in the top half last year, but they brought in some really good players in the summer, and they brought in a new coach and head of football, and they seem to have a very coherent approach, and they look really good. So they're better than they were last year. So you've got three mid-table teams, well, two mid-table teams and a promoted team were much better than last year. I'd argue we've narrowed the gap to Cardiff and Swansea, but the problem is those other teams have played at a similar level to us. So
I think that's without wanting to sound. I could try and word this carefully because I really don't want to sound patronising. But it's nice for the health of women's Welsh women's football, that we've not just come in, steamrolled all the competition and just made it look silly with the money and the profile that we've got. Obviously, that was never going to happen with Cardiff and Swansea and the profile they have as well. But there are teams other than the top two that are competing and making the division look strong.
yeah, exactly. Britain Ferry coming in and bloodying those big teams' noses is I think a potential game changer in a similar way to us coming in and giving extra exposure to the division, because that really does show, can't we be ambitious? I know I've always said this, and open that league up to say 12 teams at least, because clearly, I mean, Britain Ferry have been battling away. We stopped them coming up. They come up and they do this. Llandudno are scrapping O'Connor's Key. They've both given us tough games over the last couple of years in cups and in the second division. You just feel like, and especially, in the north, it's us and TNS. Well, there are other northern teams, like I just said. So I just feel like the Welsh FA need to grab hold of this, need to look at Britain Ferry and think, okay, there's depth. There's more depth than we've been catering for in Welsh women's football. Let's open this out a bit more.
I think as well, all the noise I've heard about the men's side of Welsh football. There was a great interview on Alternative Wales podcast a couple of months ago. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's someone that the Welsh FA have brought in to draft a proposal for the expansion and new direction of all the leagues going from 26-27, I think, or maybe 25-26, I can't remember. But they're looking to expand the men's top division and bring the second division a bit closer to the first division rather than it being regional and all this sort of stuff. I can't remember the exact details, but the short answer to that is that what I'm saying is that they're looking to make things expanded across the whole country. So hopefully we'll see that reflected in the women's game as well, Mark.
Yeah, I would be great. I'd love to see that. I mean, I don't want to be too naive in what I'm about to say, but the truth is that federations do get good chunks of money coming down from FIFA. The Welsh team has earned more money again for the FA by being more successful than it has been for many years. Welsh women's football needs investment in the infrastructure in order to allow it to grow. And it just feels to me like this is the opportunity to do it now. Like I said, with Wrexham bringing that publicity as well, it's a real chance. I think a one-off chance to really develop it into something bigger than it would have become otherwise. And I just want to,
with the Welsh women's team reaching the Euros, Mark, wouldn't there be a payment to the FA for that to the Welsh, which could be spread through the Welsh women's game or not?
I would assume, but I don't know for certain. But again, in some ways, that illustrates the problem as well, that the Welsh women's game, like the men's game, is a long way off the international side, isn't it? There's one player from the current. Well, no, beg your pardon. There's only one player based in Wales who is in the current Welsh squad, and she doesn't actually play in the League of Wales. She plays with Gwalior United, who used to be Cardiff City Ladies. They left the Welsh system and moved across to the English system. So, we're not getting that crossover yet. And the only way to achieve that will be investment in the infrastructure. Bringing young players through will stay with the Welsh clubs and, hopefully develop.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Right, should we move on from guessing about the future to speculating about the past? Let's in a moment go back and do our mini little awards ceremony for 2024. Well, none of us got the knighthoods that we thought we were going to get in the New Year's honours list, and, we're taking it personally. But we've raised our spirits enough to have a little look back at 2024 and give out a few plaudits of our own. So we're going to look at the best moments of 2024, the best signing of 2024, the best team performance of 2024, the best individual performance of 2024. I'm getting bored of saying of 2024, and the best goal of 2024. Shall we go goal first, actually? Because I've got a discussion already, because we were talking last week about whether that brilliant goal by Mullin was better than the Jack Marriott goal on the opening day of the season. Maybe that's a starting point. I think
I would have gone for Paul Mullin's goal he scored. Yeah. Just his I can't even explain it. It was just sublime.
His audacity in even trying it.
Yeah. I mean that was going back to the days when we were in the National League and he was scoring goals of fun from all over the park, and it was just sublime. And I nearly fell out the stand. I jumped so high. So
it's so hard to choose between that and the Jack Marriott goal, though, isn't it? Because both of them were absolutely sensational, weren't they?
Mm. Oh yeah. I mean, sorry.
No, go on. No, go on.
Well, Mullins.
So we all just glitched a bit there, didn't we? I did. My computer didn't disappear again.
Mullins' just predatory instincts are what make his goal special. I think he just has that awareness of where the keeper's likely to be. Once it's sitting up for him, he just knows what he wants to do with that, and that's just something which not that many players would have. But he's just got a sharpness and ability to take advantage of situations which great strikers have. It was wonderful. I got to be honest though, I think I lean towards the Marriott one. It's a beautiful touch, if you recall, by Ollie Palmer to tee him up. It's all a bit Harlem Globetrotters. Little backheel flick by Palmer, and then Marriott's the technique to take it and then to hit it on the volley with the outside of his foot in the top corner. I mean, it was exquisite. I think I'd just lean to that one.
Yeah, that was superb. But I think Mullin created goal out of nothing.
Yeah.
It came from a throw-in. It was flicked on. He kneed it with one leg and then volleyed it with the other foot. It was a goal. Absolutely out of nothing. It wasn't a goal laid on a platter for him. It was something he created himself from a throw-in.
Yeah, it's terrific, wasn't it? Fair play.
Looks like I got the deciding vote here.
It looks like it.
I
Ryan Barnett.
Gosh, yeah. And I'm even thinking to some of the team goals we scored, like the goal against Reading. That was a fantastic goal. Cannon's was it first or second against Grimsby? That was hell of a goal. Both of his goals at Grimsby were fantastic. I think if we're choosing between those two, I think I just about agree with you, Mark. Only slightly. It's like having to choose between your two favourite children, isn't it? I can't,
I'm no love Charlie yours, Bill.
I'm legit. I got the paperwork.
You two guys live in Wrexham, so you're all right, yeah.
What happened to the country, Neil?
Hey, stayed in the
county. Oh, nice. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll move on from that controversial moment. I didn't mention anybody scoring for the women's team in that because I've got an argument. I've got two in my head, best moments of 2024. They are both goals. I'm a predictable man. And one of them is Lily Jones's brilliant goal from virtually the halfway line against Britain Ferry, which was an absolute cracker. And that's still the only game Britain Ferry have lost all season. And we battered them. It was superb. Two early goals. That was the second one that really set the cat among the pigeons. Guttingly, it's the only game for the men or the women I wasn't present at because we played Harrogate at the same time. But I watched the game back again, and I was excited just seeing the scores coming in before the Harrogate game and wishing I was at the Rock. But when you look at it, I mean, it's remarkable. Britain Ferry being so good, and we just blew them away. We absolutely blew them away. And that goal, you could just see their heads go down when they see us score a goal of that caliber. Um, so that's one of my favourite moments of the season, of the year rather. The other one I was thinking of was Max Cleworth's goal at Colchester. Not only was it a massive turning point for the promotion run-in, but also it was Max scoring, and it was such an emotional, like with Lily, that sense of one of our own, and it was just great. And Cleworth then afterwards, maybe this is the moment of the year, being sort of embarrassed to celebrate and being pushed forwards by his teammates. It was lovely to see that. So those are two in my head, certainly.
He certainly seems to have come on strength to strength since then, Mark, hasn't he? So it's not only was it, I mean, he was performing well anyway, but not only was it a good moment for the club, but it was a sort of catalyst moment for him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
My moment is sort of tinged with a bit of rivalry bitterness. Both of these, I'm going to outright say it. They're both my potential choices were against Shrewsbury. I've got no qualms about saying this at all. Last year, about this time last year, actually, when we played them in the cup, I'd accidentally got myself into a bit of Twitter drama that was completely unintentional and ended up sort of, I won't go into details, but it made me dread that match a little bit more than I usually would anyway. And I would usually really dread it because personally, I know all Wrexham fans sort of see our second biggest rivalry slightly differently, but I see them as our second biggest rivals. They absolutely, when I first started going to Wrexham games, they were dominating us every single time we played against them. So I've never had a particularly good history against Shrewsbury apart from 1 or 2 games. And I think it was just a real nice turning point moment when Paul Mullin tackled one of their players in the last sort of 5 minutes, turned around and give it the big one to the away end, and it's sort of like, yeah, we've beaten these here. We're back. We're putting them in their place, and I just think that was I'd
Is that's the cup game?
In the cup game when he tackled one of their players. He ran back from God knows where, tackled one of their players, turned around and gave a big massive fist pump to the away end, and it was a magic moment that Mullin's usually involved in goals as magic moments, but that was like, he's an adopted Welshman now, isn't he? He's adopted Wrexham lad, and to do that was sort of special. And on top of that, my son had not long come home, so it was technically like the first game that he'd been around to watch. So I had him in the front room watching it with me, and it was just, there was just a lot of magic going on there that I'd managed to avoid any more Twitter drama after that had happened. And then the next one was Jack Marriott's goal against Shrewsbury at home to seal the sort of 3-0 win. And just the calamity of their defending, and again, just a real moment of the crowd taking all of that in and being ahead of them was just. I don't care about being petty, Mark. I really don't, and I've actually not really got, other than the localness, I've not got much of a problem with Shrewsbury as a club. They're a proper club, they've got a proper decent fan base. But
stop backtracking, man.
No, that's what if you can't enjoy those moments, what's the point in having a rivalry, and it's almost a compliment to them that how far ahead they've been from us in the last 15 years that we enjoy these sort of moments so much. So I'm torn between those two. Neil, who would you go? What would you go for?
Oh, can I just say, you remind me now, maybe my favourite moment is when the Shrewsbury fans held their banner up upside down. That was my favourite Tifo moment, definitely, of my life, actually. Except for was it Napoli fans in Milan in the 80s? Milan, of course, we know there's the whole sort of unpleasant thing about the north making fun of the Mezzogiorno in the south, and Milan horribly after there was a controversy because the French had tested nuclear weapons in the Pacific, and the Milan fans put up a tifo saying, when they were playing Napoli, saying no to nuclear testing in the Pacific, do it to Napoli instead. which I thought was not. It's funny, but it's not nice. But the brilliant response in the return match from the Napoli fans was they've unfurled this enormous banner the size of the home end, which was just an empty mirror, and it had holes slit into it. And the ultras behind the banner then put their naked backsides out through the holes in the mirror, and then unfurled a message saying, "Milan fans, look at your reflections." So yeah, that's my second favourite tifo after the Shrewsbury upside down banner. Sorry, Neil, I've given you some thinking time there. What's your moment of the season?
It's quite all right. No, I was intent to listen to your story, Mark. Now, firstly, Bill, I'd like to say you're wearing Shrewsbury Town colour headphones first of all.
Oh, that's his background, isn't it?
That's no, they're just blue. They're just blue and black. Neil,
all right, I can just about one of them as well. See, so
yeah, it's just the zoom sort of not getting the flag in.
The Plains Chester away shirt on his wall. The John Rooney.
Oh,
like you, Bill, I'd agree with the Shrewsbury are our second biggest rivals. Totally, especially when you live over the border in Shropshire. And I've got two. One, which is really nice one. My biggest, favourite part of the season was Wrexham running out to their first home game in League Division 1. That was a very, very proud moment for me. It's been many, many years since we've actually reached those dizzy heights of League 1 football in League 2 in those days. So, but all day long, it's got to be thumping Shrewsbury 3-0.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
There's a clown here in Whitchurch who's on Facebook all the time. We're going to beat hates Wrexham. We're going to Wrexham. He calls us all the names under the sun. Yeah. And for us to thump them so comprehensively 3-0 at the racecourse. And was it their fans who were singing the national anthem when we went and scored another goal? I can't remember. Was it that game or another?
It was the third goal as well. I didn't want to bring it up because it was a young lads video, and you don't want to, the folly of youth and all that. You don't want to take the mick out of young lads too much, but there's a lot of joy to be taken out of seeing a crowd silence as they were singing God Save the King. Yeah.
And then we go and score the third goal, and I thought, for me, that was just the icing on the cake. And this guy went very, very quiet. Fair enough. He's an avid Shrewsbury Town fan. I'd take it out on for that. Somebody has to support them, but he's just vile, towards Wrexham. Vile. Worse than Chester to us. He called us the old bin dippers and all that, but far, far worse, which I can't say on a live stream. So yeah, I'm so glad that we gave it to him on that game at Wrexham. And as Bill said, we're the better class team now than they are. So look where they are in the league and where we are in the league.
Guys, we're playing them in a couple of weeks, so let's make sure. Let's hope we can do it again. Otherwise, on I don't know, what do they have? The final Haystack Weekly, the Shrewsbury podcast.
Tractor Weekly, it is, isn't it?
Won't they? Sorry?
The Tractor Weekly, isn't it?
Oh, fair point. Yeah, absolutely. Right, well, I think we've got a winner for best moment there, haven't we? Undoubtedly. Just looking at a few of the others. I'm going to throw up that Britain Ferry game again in best team performance. That the three that came into my head were that when we battered Britain Ferry, beating Barrow 4-1 on New Year's Day when they turned up with the best defence in the country, and Stephen Fletcher scored a hat trick and we eviscerated them, and beating Crawley 4-1, one of the last home games we had of the season. In fact, it was the midweek game before we clinched promotion against Forest Green. The pressure was on. We needed to win. Crawley also got promoted. They were an excellent team. Scott Lindsay really had them playing well. And we beat them 4-1 and really dominated the high-class team and made them look poor, which they weren't. So, I don't know. I think I'm leaning towards the Crawley one because of the stakes involved as well as the performance.
Yeah, Crawley was going to be my choice, Mark, but I will say about the Barrow game, that was the day after my lad was born. I know he seems to be coming up a lot today, but I obviously couldn't go to the game, but I timed So we've got a dog, and I timed coming home to walk the dog with being able to listen to the commentary. But I could hear the cheer. Obviously, there's that little bit of a delay, isn't there, between live and what's actually happening. And I could hear the cheers through my headphones whilst walking him around the streets. So that was quite a nice moment, sort of on a bit of like cloud nine anyway, and that happening. But yeah, that Crawley performance was something else. I took my little cousin to that, and she'd been to a couple of the women's games but hadn't been to a men's game yet, and I just had to say to her, it's like, it's not like this every week. Even now, when it's as good as it is now, the atmosphere was amazing, wasn't it? It really took off, because I think everyone sort of realised, Neil, didn't they, that we were going up after beating Crawley in that game.
Oh yeah, it just went around that resonated around the ground, didn't we? When other scorelines going our way as well. It was just another sublime moment in our history under the tenure of Rob and Ryan, and how things have changed in 2-3 years since they've been here.
Yeah, absolutely. So is that a unanimous call?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, we've got two more. One of them, let's see if we can clear the decks of this one, because for best individual performance, is anyone going to come up with something better than Ryan Barnett's Assistosaurus performance against Northampton, where he sets up 3, and the other one is a beautiful cross which McLean lays off, and if people had finished better, he could have ended up with about 10 assists. It was phenomenal, wasn't it?
Oh, he's been my player of the season so far. He's been sublime. He's developed so well as a player, taken on the defence. And every time he puts the ball into that box, it's right in the right place. And 9 times out of 10, he hits his target, and he's just a class player. And I'm glad he's signed an extension to his contract, and he's staying with us longer, because I think he's another player like Max Lewis for the future at Wrexham.
Yeah, this was the one I struggled with the most, really, Mark, because I feel like as a team generally we're a team that sort of, the whole side generally plays a 7 out of 10, and it's not often that we have such stellar individual performances, is it? We're not a one-man team generally. We even people want to say that about Mullin, but yeah, I think you're right. It's hard to argue. He was absolutely. He's a world beater, wasn't he? He wouldn't have looked out of place in the Championship playing the way he didn't on that day. So fair play, Ryan Barnett.
I would say though, an honourable mention to some goalkeepers. Okonkwo at Bolton makes a couple of ludicrous saves in the second half. Callum Burton lets 4 goals in his debut at Sheffield United, but actually makes a string of ludicrous saves and can't be blamed for the goal, including saving a penalty. And it may well end up being his only ever performance for Wrexham, but Bradley Foster in that EFL Trophy match, it was just ludicrously good. He just made so many saves in that game, and I think that guy deserves a bit of recognition for that. He could well turn out to be a heck of a quiz question, couldn't he? And best signing, if you're looking at the men, I think Ollie Rathbone's got a big case. That sounded wrong somehow, didn't it? But I'm saying Liv Fuller, who has been absolutely outstanding for the women's team, comes in off a long-term injury. I don't think she would have come if the injury hadn't happened, but the rehabilitation was brilliant. Started off playing at centre back, even played at right back when we tried some fun tactics which disrupted Cardiff, and then has pushed into midfield more this season. And when she sits in, but she's class defender. But then when she sits in midfield, she regulates play. She passes so well. She wins the ball so well. And she's been on a crazy scoring streak this season as well. And ended the last game before the break, essentially, as we were going for the winner in that mad 4-3 game against Barry. Essentially, she was playing off Rosie Hughes and scores her second goal of the match, the winning goal, right at the end. So she gets my vote. Maybe, gentlemen, if you want to pick a men's nominee as well.
I throw a little bit of a curveball and say Arthur Okonkwo, because technically we signed him in the summer. I know we'd had him on loan, but not so much because of any extra impact than he had from the season before, but just because sealing that's his signature was a bit of a statement of intent, I think, of where we were planning on going this season. And he's potentially a keeper that is either going to be with us as we travel up the leagues, or could leave us for big money because his potential's sky high. So I think for me, yeah, Okonkwo is probably my signing of the season or of the year. Sorry.
Fair point. How about you, Neil?
I had a choice difficult between the two, between Dobson and Rathbone, because I think they've both added a lot to the midfield. I mean, granted, they haven't had until recently, the last couple of months, they've actually got a lot more game time, where before they were struggling to get in the team. But I think Dobson has added that extra bit of class, can I say, to midfield, and the quality of the passing that he's making. But Rathbone he reminds me of a Mickey Thomas, not as a striker, but it's just in his appearance, the way he runs, and he puts 100% into every game that he'll be all over the pitch. So for me, both those is very difficult to choose between either of them, which are the best signings for us this season. But
Dobson, interestingly, Dobson has the second most successful tackles in the entire division.
Wow!
Well, so he's got the class, but he's also got the aggression too, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he's switching his style of play to be more of like a right-sided centre midfielder rather than the centre defensive midfielder as well. And
yeah,
I mean, it feels harsh, doesn't it? Because you've got Brunt, Burton.
Yeah. Well, maybe a bit premature to say, but Matty James could well turn out to be the biggest signing we make this season.
It's
Brunt's done very well, isn't he? Too, yeah.
It's Parky rarely misses, does he, with his signings, Neil?
Yeah.
Oh no, he's got that quality that he brings in, the right temperament of a player, the right attributes he's actually looking for in the player, and the quality he's looking for in the player, and he's got to find that player that fits in with the team, both in the dressing room and on the pitch, and he does that so well. How he does it, I do not. And routes these players out to bring them into the team with the quality, the finesse he's looking for. He's doing an absolute fantastic job.
Fair play. Well, and if the
I think, Mark, to be fair, because you'd said Rathbone for the men, and Neil can't choose between Dobson and Rathbone, I think that kind of puts it as Rathbone, doesn't it? He would probably be my second choice after Okonkwo as well, to be fair. So,
but should also go for Fuller with the women's team, Mark, as well. If
100%,
she's had such a big impact on the women's team.
Yeah, she's been phenomenal, and thus I officially declare the 2024 awards closed. You can all now go and get on with your lives. It's the end of this episode of Final Whistle Weekly as well, isn't it? It's been a pleasure as always, chaps. Let's go and do it to Baron Ferguson before he does it to us. Adios, muchachos.
Yeah, good night, guys.
Thank you.